Again, we'll dive into each of these teams, Notre Dame, Texas Tech, and UNCG, as we continue on this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. But we catch up with the managing editor of D1 Baseball, somebody that puts a lot of heart and soul into the game of college baseball. Kendall Rogers joins us on this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. We continue on this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation, a big college baseball day as the field of 64 gets announced, the sites for the college in the College World Series and the regionals getting announced yesterday, the field of 64 getting announced today. Again, we found out that Georgia Southern going to be one of the top 16, actually the number 16, and host a regional. Came out today that number 2, Notre Dame, number 3, Texas Tech, and number 4, UNCG will be coming to J.I. Clements Stadium in Statesboro. Who better to talk about the college baseball world than Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball? Appreciate you joining us.
You got it, man. It's good to be here.
Talk about this regional. You guys have had Georgia Southern as a host for the last couple of weeks, bounced out, I think, about 3 weeks ago, but have, for the most part, for in these projections that you guys do every week, have had Georgia Southern as a host. What makes Georgia Southern a top 16 in your eyes?
I think the biggest thing for me when I look at Georgia Southern, just the sheer consistency. And really, when I talk about that, I talk about the whole top of the Sun Belt. You look at Coastal Carolina down the stretch, played really well. Mainly when you look at Texas State and Georgia Southern, both of those teams played really, really well the entire season. I think if you're the committee, it's good to reward those kind of teams, and it's good to reward teams that go out and play people. The thing that Georgia Southern did, we kind of heard that from committee chair Mike Buddy today. The thing that Rodney did is he went out and played really good teams in midweek, played Tennessee opening weekend. You know, he got his feet wet against some really good RPI teams, and that certainly has helped the Eagles down the stretch. So I think when you look at what they did in the Sun Belt, they got the road series win over Texas State. They took care of business at some midweek games. They deserve to be a top 16 seed. And I was glad to see it because there's so many years where, you know, the quote unquote kind of upper mid majors, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Like, you know, if they're in the mix for the top 16, you know, they tend to side with kind of a power conference team. So I like the fact that Georgia Southern's in there. I think it's awesome to kind of to have a regional to place, you know, like Statesboro, when you look at the pictures of the ballpark and it's absolutely beautiful. The aesthetics are outstanding. And then you look at the teams that are in this field with Notre Dame, Texas Tech, UNCG, obviously the Red Raiders and Fighting Irish, kind of the two brand names. That's going to be a really, really exciting weekend. And hopefully GSU fans come out in force to support that team.
Talk about this field for Georgia Southern. I know Notre Dame is somebody that you guys were kind of surprised weren't a host in their own right. Texas Tech, a team that slides into the 3, and then UNCG. Talk about this field and what Georgia Southern's going up against.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think the biggest thing, you know, starting out with the Spartans of UNCG is Billy Godwin is a guy who, you know, was at East Carolina before he went to UNCG. You know, he's always had, you know, kind of the right formula in his program. He certainly has UNCG going. If you remember Lee Jarrett, who's now the Notre Dame head coach, who's in this field, he used to be at UNCG and did a really nice job there. So I just think when you look at UNCG, the thing that stands out to me is the job they did offensively in those final 2 games against Wofford, another really good SoCon team. You know, they scored double-digit runs, I think, in those 2 games against I think it was 9, and then double-digit runs in the last game against Wofford. That tells me they can be very offensive, especially as you get deeper into a regional. I think Notre Dame, for me, what's really interesting about Notre Dame is we talked so much about the job that you know, Zach Prajner and guys like that, you know, do offensively for Notre Dame. But, you know, how about the job they've done on the mound at times? You know, there are weekends throughout the year where Notre Dame's pitching staff has been phenomenal, and John Michael Bertrand is kind of that guy for them. And I don't know if Georgia Southern will see him, because my guess is he starts the opening game against Texas Tech. But, you know, he's one of the better arms in the ACC. So the thing about Notre Dame is they're really well coached. You know, Lee Jarrett does a phenomenal job. This is now 3 straight full seasons that Notre Dame has had a very good team. I expect them to come in here pretty hot because, you know, they thought they should have hosted. I think they should have hosted, and you know, not to the detriment of Georgia Southern, but I thought they should have hosted over someone else. And they're going to come into this weekend with a chip on their shoulder. And so that's Notre Dame. Texas Tech, again, a brand name. Tim Tadlock's done a phenomenal job. This is probably worst is the wrong word, but this is probably his least talented team. Yet here they are back in the postseason, and here they are finishing, top 3 or 4 in the Big 12 once again. I think the big thing for Texas Tech is, the issues they've had at times this year is when you get past Brandon Birdsell, which Georgia Southern won't see Birdsell because my guess is he'll start the opening game. Once you get past Brandon Birdsell and Andrew Morris, I mean, there is a big drop off pitching wise for Texas Tech. Offensively, not quite the Texas Tech teams of the past. But, when you look at Jace Young, you talk about star players, a guy that'll be a top 10 draft pick here in less than a month now. He's a phenomenal player. The big thing for teams is you got to keep Kurt Wilson and Jace Young from beating you. If you can do that, you can beat Texas Tech. But this is a fun field. I think it's awesome because it's one thing to host in Statesboro, and it's another to, instead of getting, and no disrespect to these teams, but there's a difference between getting like Columbia and Campbell and getting Texas Tech and Notre Dame. People that go to the ballpark this weekend, they're going to get their money's worth.
One thing that kind of surprised us about this field, Georgia Southern expected to see either Georgia or Georgia Tech in this field, Georgia Tech going to Knoxville, but it seemed like there's a lot less of the regionality kind of playing a factor this year.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think when you look at this field, the field as a whole, frankly, there are a lot of interesting, placements, right? I mean, you look at like Auburn with UCLA going there. I mean, UCLA going to Auburn, like what? You got Arizona going to Coral Gables. So in a way, I kind of like it. I think we get hamstrung so many times of just making this all about regionality. And I'll be honest with you, I think if I'm Rodney Hennon, I think I like this field as opposed to getting Georgia and Georgia Tech, because what happens if Georgia is playing Georgia Southern in a final game? All of a sudden, you got people in black and red and masks going to Statesboro to root on the Bulldogs. So I kind of like this. You're giving Georgia Southern its host, and you're not allowing someone else to potentially kind of try to run in here and run the place. So I actually like sending those two schools out of state.
Talk about the Sun Belt Conference as a whole. Turns into a 4-bid league this year with Louisiana getting the win in the title game yesterday over Georgia Southern. Coastal Carolina, we kind of thought was on the fringe. They end up being in the field as well. So 4 teams in the Sun Belt Conference, and really good to see the Sun Belt get back to a multi-bid lead.
Oh, there's no doubt. This league as a whole is trending so far up right now. I mean, if you look up and down this league, and I know they didn't have a great year as a whole, but, they started off the year great. Like Georgia State, I think is a program that the brass drum ball has, moving, kind of in an upward trajectory. You look at Louisiana and the job that Matt has done there. I think them getting back to the postseason is big. This is a team I thought was actually going to be really good coming in the postseason. I don't know if they're really good just yet, but obviously being able to beat the Eagles in the championship, that tells me they've got that kind of potential. Troy Skylar Meade in his first year, how about the job that he did? They made some noise there in Montgomery. And then you look at Georgia Southern, Coastal, Texas State, and then even South Alabama. And then, oh, by the way, next year you had Southern Miss. This is a league that was really good this year. This is a league that as they add Southern Miss, it's going to continue to get better and better and better. So I love where the Sun Belt is. The thing about the Sun Belt is, it might be quote unquote an upper mid major, but this league as a whole and its fan bases as a whole in this league really, really care about college baseball. And I think it shows in the talent they're able to accumulate, and it shows in the commitment that these administrations are making to these programs.
Kendall, I know it's a busy day for you and the rest of the staff at D1 Baseball, but really appreciate what you guys do for the game of college baseball. And I know you've got some more people on Twitter that want a piece of you.
Yeah, exactly, man. Everybody's coming after me today. You can follow me, Kendall Rogers, on Twitter. I'll be honest with you. I love seeing Georgia Southern as a host. It's not one of those things where they were gifted a host. They went out there and earned it. They did the trick in non-conference. They were consistent during the regular season, and I'm really happy for Rodney and that staff because they've put together a resume that deserved a host, and they were rewarded for it. So again, I hope the fans come out and pack that place this week, and that team deserves it.
Kendall, appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, guys.
Once again, that's Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball.
Kendall Rogers hates your team.
That's a good dude. That is a really, really good dude that knows the game of college baseball. If you don't know the story behind D1 Baseball, go and look it up. The fact that Kendall Rogers pretty much built D1 Baseball from the ground up just because, to be honest, there's not a whole lot of national attention on the college baseball world. He saw a void and boy, they fill it. Do a really good job over at D1 Baseball. Appreciate Kendall taking the time to join us tonight.
I would hope that with the potential deregulation that's going to take place with the NCAA's Transformation Committee, that a sport that has only been gifted 11.75 scholarships is now going to get a chance to be on a more level playing field. And look, that could be the big boys loading up even more and making it difficult for teams like a Georgia Southern, Louisiana, Coastal, Texas State, and whomever else to get into the postseason and potentially host. But the fact that you have that potential now instead of being shackled by so few scholarships where a football, a basketball, even a volleyball gets more scholarships than a baseball does. But I know that's because of Title IX. That's more than okay. But the fact that a sport that can be a revenue-producing sport didn't have the kind of coverage that Kendall and team have been able to develop, it has become a vital part of how it is now viewed nationally.
He's a really good dude that really appreciates good baseball and really appreciates this Georgia Southern program